Ancient Egypt is often depicted as a land of opulence and splendor. People's fascination with this ancient civilization continues to grow, with many wanting to know more about its culture, people, art, religion, and way of life. One of the most well-known aspects of ancient Egypt is the golden mask of Tutankhamun, which was discovered in the Valley of the Kings in 1922. It gives us a rare glimpse into the face of a young pharaoh who ruled from 1332 to 1323 BC. However, what many people don't know is that while the pharaohs lived lives of luxury, those who served them did not. So, what would your life have truly been like if you were a servant in the palace of the pharaoh? If you had been born a slave in ancient Egypt, you would have been considered property for your entire life. Slavery was an integral part of Egyptian society, and slaves were typically acquired through conquest during war or through trade. As a result, there were many different types of slaves, including prisoners of war and those who were bought and sold in the slave markets. Men, women, and even children could be enslaved, and slavery was seen as a hereditary institution, meaning that children born to female slaves were also considered slaves. Slaves were not paid for their work and were instead given food, clothing, and shelter by their owners. They were expected to work long hours performing a variety of tasks, such as domestic work, agricultural labor, or skilled trades. Treatment of slaves varied depending on their owner, and some slaves were treated relatively well, while others were subjected to harsh punishments for any mistakes or disobedience. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a testament to the ingenuity and skill of the ancient Egyptians. Built around 2580 BC, it is the oldest of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and remains the only one still standing. It took an estimated 20 to 30 years to complete and required a workforce of up to 100,000 people, including skilled laborers, artisans, and architects. While the construction of the pyramids was a massive undertaking, it was not solely responsible for depopulation. Other factors such as disease, famine, and overgrazing also contributed to the decline of the Old Kingdom population. Nevertheless, the construction of the pyramids had a significant impact on the environment and resources of ancient Egypt. The massive amount of limestone and other building materials required for construction led to the depletion of local resources and deforestation. Additionally, the labor-intensive process of quarrying and transporting building materials resulted in the loss of life and injury to many workers. Despite the hardships and challenges involved in their construction, the pyramids of ancient Egypt remain a source of wonder and inspiration today. These monumental structures are a reminder of the ingenuity and determination of the ancient Egyptians, and their enduring legacy continues to captivate people around the world. In addition to working long hours, slaves were also forbidden from leaving their master's property without permission. If they were caught trying to escape, they could be severely punished, including being sold to another master, being put to death, or even having their families separated. Slaves were also forbidden from testifying in court, and their word was not considered valid in legal matters. They were also forbidden from marrying free people and were not allowed to own property or take part in religious ceremonies. Despite these restrictions, slaves were able to form close bonds with each other and with their masters' families. In some cases, slaves were able to earn their freedom through hard work and loyalty, and some even gained positions of power and influence. Life as a servant in ancient Egypt was not easy. Servants were expected to work long hours in the household of a wealthy Egyptian, usually without pay. Their duties could include cooking, cleaning, gardening, and taking care of animals. In addition to their domestic duties, servants were also expected to be available at all times to run errands or perform other tasks as requested by their employers. They had no personal freedom and were not allowed to leave their employer's house without permission. Servants were also forbidden from speaking their mind or questioning their employers, and were expected to obey all orders without hesitation. If a servant made a mistake or disobeyed an order, they could be beaten or otherwise punished. In addition to physical punishment, servants were also subjected to verbal abuse and humiliation. Masters often viewed their servants as inferior and would use insults and other forms of emotional abuse to maintain control over them. Despite the difficult working conditions, some servants were able to save enough money to buy their freedom or the freedom of their family members. For those who worked in the palace, life was even more challenging. Palace servants were expected to maintain the highest level of decorum and behave in a way that reflected positively on their employer. They were forbidden from engaging in any activities that could bring shame or dishonor to the palace and were subject to strict rules and regulations. Palace servants were also expected to be loyal and trustworthy and were often given access to valuable items and information. Any perceived disloyalty or betrayal could result in severe punishment, including banishment from the kingdom. As a servant in the palace of the pharaoh, your day would begin at dawn when you were woken up by the palace guard. You would immediately get out of bed and begin your chores without wasting any time. Your first task would be to make sure that the pharaoh's chambers are clean and tidy. You would dust the furniture, polish the floors, and make sure the linen is fresh and the towels are clean. You would also need to dress the pharaoh in the morning, which is an incredibly important task because you are responsible for making sure that the pharaoh looks his best when he greets his court. If you make any mistakes while dressing the pharaoh, it could be seen as a sign of disrespect and could get you in trouble. Your next task would be to prepare the pharaoh's breakfast. This was another important task because you are responsible for making sure that the pharaoh eats well and has the energy to rule his kingdom. You would need to cook the pharaoh's favorite dishes and make sure that everything is presented perfectly. You would also need to make sure that the pharaoh has everything he needs for the day, such as fresh fruit, wine, and flowers. Once the pharaoh is ready, you would accompany him to the throne room where he would greet his court. You would stand behind the pharaoh as he meets with his advisors and officials, and you would be responsible for handing him anything he needs, such as a glass of water or a piece of paper. You would also need to listen carefully to the pharaoh and be ready to respond if anyone in the court asks him a question. After the court session, you would return to the kitchen to prepare lunch for the pharaoh and his guests. Once again, you would need to make sure that the meal is perfect and that the pharaoh is happy with everything. In the afternoon, you would help the pharaoh prepare for any events he has planned, such as a religious ceremony or a reception. You would help him put on his ceremonial robes and jewelry and make sure that he is ready to go. As a servant in the palace of the pharaoh, your job is to serve the pharaoh and make his life easier. You are not allowed to speak unless spoken to, and you must always do as you are told without complaining. The pharaoh is the most powerful person in Egypt, and he expects his servants to be totally obedient. If you make a mistake, the pharaoh could become very angry and you could be punished. The pharaoh is also not allowed to look at a servant while talking to him. To look the pharaoh in the eyes is considered a very rude and disrespectful thing to do, and if a servant accidentally looks at the pharaoh, he may be punished. As a servant, you are forbidden from eating until your master has finished eating. You are also forbidden from drinking alcohol or smoking, and you are forbidden from having any contact with foreigners. You are not allowed to leave the palace without permission, and you must always be available to serve the pharaoh. Even if you are off duty, you must always be prepared to drop what you are doing and serve the pharaoh. If he needs something, your personal life does not matter. While you might think that serving the pharaoh would be an honor, it's actually a very difficult job. You have to give up your freedom and your life is controlled by the pharaoh. You are not allowed to make any decisions and you must always do what you are told. You are also not allowed to complain or question the pharaoh's orders. If you do, you will be punished. If you are a male servant, you must be tall and strong. You must be able to lift heavy objects and carry them long distances. You must also be able to fight if the pharaoh is attacked. If you are a female servant, you must be beautiful and graceful. You must also be able to cook and clean and take care of the pharaoh's children. Being a servant in the palace of the pharaoh was a dangerous job. If you make a mistake, you could be punished severely. The pharaoh could have you beaten or put in jail. In the worst case scenario, the pharaoh could have you put to death. Despite the dangers, many people wanted to be servants in the palace of the pharaoh. It was considered a great honor to serve the pharaoh and his family, and many people believed that it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Now, here's a question for you. Would you want to be a servant in the palace of the pharaoh? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We hope that you enjoyed this journey back in time to ancient Egypt. Don't forget to subscribe for more videos like this one.